A split second can often mean the difference between winning and losing in sports. As a distance runner, Reilly Shellenbarger knows that, as well as anyone. Yet, in Shellenbarger's case, that was the amount of time it took for his life to change forever one day last summer. Shellenbarger's plans to prepare for what he hoped would be a breakout season at Goodrich High School changed in an instant during a horrific car accident that left him with a fractured skull and bleeding and 3 spots on his brain. Just that quickly, summer had become a battle between life and death. Assuming he survived the immediate emergency surgery required to save his life, Shellenbarger would have to learn how to walk all over again before he could even think about running, something that was the last thing on anyone's mind as he lay in a Grand Rapids hospital room. Yet, today, barely 10 months later, Shellenbarger is not only running but he's back competing for Goodrich's track and field team, an amazing turnaround since that awful day last July when the car he was driving was hit broadside by a semi-truck. "It's a miracle," the 17-year-old Shellenbarger said recently. "Yes, it truly is." The accident. Shellenbarger's story began July 5, when he was in northern Michigan visiting his mother, Tracy. While driving on an unfamiliar road to visit a friend a couple of hours away, Shellenbarger was only a few minutes from his destination when it happened. Although he has no recollection of the accident, "It's a good thing I don't remember it," he said. The state police determined that Shellenbarger had stopped at a blinking red light before proceeding on his way near the village of Messick between Cadillac and Traverse City. He was traveling west at the same time a fuel tanker traveling south approached the intersection. The truck had a blinking yellow light and Shellenbarger ended up pulling directly into its path. The truck hit the passenger side of his car, undoubtedly saving his life, leaving the vehicle a crumpled mess. The car Reilly Shellenbarger was driving after it was hit by a semi-truck in northern Michigan. Courtesy of Scott Shellenbarger, "I just remember the day it happened, about an hour before, one short section of the road, one tiny piece of road I had never been on," Shellenbarger said. "That's about all I remember. Then, I woke up another month later realizing what was going on. It's a good thing I don't remember the accident, but I still want to know what exactly happened. I want to see what happened right before the accident and then I can zoom past that, and skip that part. I thought they were playing a trick on me, that I just woke up in the hospital with half my head missing and then I came to realize once I got the pain that it was true. And I was like, I'm an idiot. Why did I do that?" Diagnosing the injuries, Shellenbarger was whisked to Munson Medical Center in Traverse City, about 30 miles from the site of the accident, and doctors discovered he suffered a fractured skull and was bleeding on his brain. The accident occurred at 10:55 a.m., but his parents didn't find out for a couple of hours. Tracy, whose car her son Reilly was driving, was on her lunch break at work and state police weren't able to notify her until she returned to work about 1 p.m. Reilly's father, Scott, and his wife Ann were at his father's home in Hale and knew something was wrong when they saw several missed calls from Tracy. "I saw there were 3 calls to my dad's house, Ann's phone and my phone," Scott Shellenbarger said. "It hit me right then. Oh, no. Something's wrong." When Scott finally got word about the accident, he and Ann began heading toward Traverse City before reaching Gaylord and changing direction after learning that Reilly was going to be airlifted to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital in Grand Rapids. "The hardest part of that is you're driving across the state and you've got 2 more hours to go and you don't know if you're going to see your kid alive again," Scott Shellenbarger said. "That was just messed up. By the time we got there, it was within minutes of when he flew in. You're still hoping that he's going to survive and he'll be alive at least to see him. It's hard because you don't know if you're going to lose the kid before you can say goodbye. It was very difficult to walk in and see him. Before Reilly arrived in Grand Rapids, a neurosurgeon had been notified he was on his way to DeVos, where a second CAT scan was immediately taken before Reilly was moved to the intensive care unit. That's when the surgeon told his parents how they were going to treat Reilly. We weren't standing there not even 10 minutes and that surgeon walked in and he said, "I've got to take your son to surgery right now. We've got to save his life," Scott recalled. And I looked at him, I've got some medical background, and I said, "So, that means you've taken another CAT scan, right?" And he said, "Yes, we did. And it's worse. There's 3 brain bleeds instead of 2. One in the center, one in the front and one on the right. And the 2 that were diagnosed in Traverse City are the worst," he said. "We'll do our best." And that was it. Reilly also suffered 2 broken ribs, but they were healed by the time he regained consciousness. Other than his head and the ribs, there wasn't a mark on him, Scott Shellenbarger said. Life-saving surgery. The 2.5-hour surgery saved Reilly's life, but he still wasn't out of the woods. Nobody was really sure what the youngster would be capable of doing if he ever regained consciousness. His father said Reilly was unconscious for 7 days. He would move his arms at times, but he couldn't respond to requests for him to squeeze anyone's hands. "So you didn't know if he was going to wake up and be completely," Scott said, his voice tailing off without finishing the dreadful thought. What could he do? Could he talk? Could he hear? You didn't know. When he woke up, he said a couple words and each day he did a little more and a little more. Remarkably, Reilly was on the mend, but he was still facing a long road to recovery. Rehabilitation. 10 days after the accident, Reilly was moved to Mary Free Bed Rehabilitation Hospital in Grand Rapids, which specializes in a number of areas that include brain injuries. Therapists immediately began working with Reilly, who had to learn to walk all over again. With Reilly wearing a blue helmet to protect his head in the event he fell, therapists began moving his feet one at a time to retrain his brain on what it takes to walk. Reilly was also dealing with severe headaches that would strike when he got into or out of bed. "I had already been through a lot of pain before I woke up," said Reilly, who prides himself on being someone who doesn't complain. "I was kind of used to it, so it wasn't too bad. The surgery was the worst part, the 3 surgeries I had to go through, waking up from them. But it wasn't too bad. When I first woke up and I was still in a wheelchair, I was like, well, maybe I might not be able to, but I'm going to run anyways. I'm going to try. I'm going to get up and walk," and he did. Determined to return to his old self, Reilly began getting stronger while regaining more and more of his dexterity and motor skills during rehab. Finally, on Sept. 1. Reilly and his father, who had spent 7 days a week living in a guest room at Mary Free Bed, not far from Reilly's hospital room, returned home to Goodrich. It was another step in a long journey. More surgery. Once he got back on his feet again, Reilly had to undergo a second surgery. Sept. 18. Doctors removed a large piece of his skull after the accident to relieve the swelling on his brain, and it was kept in a freezer until they were ready to put it back in place. But his body ended up rejecting it. The technical term is bone flap resorption, so he had to go back in for another surgery. Feb. 1. This time, doctors inserted a piece of titanium mesh to stabilize the piece of skull they had reinserted, and his hair has grown back to cover it. The only sign of the injury is when Reilly parts his hair to display his scar. "I've got a little bit of scars right here," he said, parting his hair. "No pain at all. It's just like this little plastic layer, a little bubble. It kept everything in place." There was a temporary setback when Reilly began running again in December, and he felt as if something was moving around in his head. He had developed a small hole after the second surgery. Scott Shellenbarger compared it to a dolphin's blowhole, but doctors were confident it would close up on its own, and it did. Today, the only medication Reilly takes is one pill a day to prevent seizures. Scott said Reilly has to take the drug Zepra for 18 months as a precaution against developing epilepsy. He also undergoes physical therapy 3 times a week at home. Back to school. Reilly returned to classes in November, but only for a couple of hours a day. His father has been amazed at how well Reilly is doing in the 3 classes he's taking: social studies, economics and college English. Although the classes are graded as pass-fail because of his brain injury, Scott said Reilly is getting 2 A's and 1 B. That's in line with how he did in the classroom before the accident, when Reilly was carrying a 3.9 grade point average. He had a class load that included physics and AP history, which saved him, Scott Shellenbarger said. He's still going to have to take 6 classes next year, but he's going to graduate on time because he was ahead of the ball. Reilly hopes to attend Michigan Tech, his dad's alma mater, and follow in his father's footsteps by becoming an engineer. Scott Shellenbarger is a civil engineer who runs his business out of the family home, which allowed him to remain with Reilly while he was in the hospital for nearly 2 months. Reilly said he sleeps well at night and reports no problems taking tests, even though he still has some problems with his memory. "Sometimes I get distracted easily and I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago or what I needed to remember," he said. "I'll get a notification on my phone to take medication and I'll swipe it away and go upstairs to take it and I get distracted and, wait, what was I supposed to do? I don't remember what I was supposed to do." The return to running. This was supposed to be Reilly's breakout season as a runner at Goodrich after he qualified for the state cross-country meet as an individual in 2016. He placed 106th out of 242 runners in Class B with a time of 17 minutes 14 seconds and 1 millisecond and was hoping for big things as a junior. His father was so impressed with Reilly's progress that he hired a local coach who worked with Stanford All-American Grant Fisher of Grand Blanc to train Reilly once a week during the summer. Reilly returned to running in December but took some time off after the blowhole setback and returned to running about 6 weeks after his 3rd surgery in February. Since track season began, he's been steadily improving his time in the 1,600 meters, his main event. His best time before the accident was 4:40 and he clocked 6:45 in his first attempt at the mile after resuming running. He broke the 6-minute barrier last month with a time of 5 minutes 57 seconds and 91 milliseconds at Lake Fenton, and last week ran the 1,600 in 5 minutes 39 seconds and 30 milliseconds versus Kiruna in Mount Morris. By next year, Reilly wants to not only top his personal record but break his father's PR of 4:28 set when he was a high school runner in Indian River. "I feel close to being back to myself, but not exactly," Reilly said. "I just wish I was my old self and I could run my 4:40 mile. But I'm glad I'm alive. That's all I can say." Reilly's destination that day at the time of the accident. Reilly was dating fellow Goodrich runner Jillian Lang, who was at her family's cabin about 120 miles away in Harriet near Cadillac. Reilly was on his way to spend a few hours with her when the accident occurred. Jillian, 16, had trouble coming to grips with the accident, blaming herself and worrying others might do the same thing. "That's what made it really hard," she said. "Maybe if we had given each other a call in the morning, it wouldn't have happened. I had been waiting for him and he wasn't showing up. The accident was 15 minutes from my house and it was a 2-hour drive. His mom was texting me, 'Has Reilly shown up?' and then she gave me a call." Jillian was so distraught she had to seek help from a therapist, but she said, "I'm doing fine now." Although they broke up about a month ago, she said, "It's still great to be friends and be around him." Jillian, who helped with Reilly's rehabilitation, was shocked at what she saw when she first visited him in the hospital. "I almost didn't have words," she said during a recent track meet. "I tried to be strong and not cry, but it was really hard not to because I'm standing there and his head's all screwed up and I'm not very good with hospitals. Some people get paralyzed from that kind of accident or are brain dead. It's just incredible how far he's come. He'd get these terrible headaches just standing in the hospital, and now he can go out there, on the track, and do this. It's incredible to watch him do this, and the staff did an incredible job with his rehab. His personality has always been really bright and positive. He still was able to retain that, which I'm really proud of. I'd say he's almost back to normal with his personality and everything." Sad deja vu for Goodrich. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time the Goodrich community has dealt with a car accident involving one of its runners. Fortunately, Shellenbarger's accident has had a better outcome than the one Goodrich dealt with back in 2006. Twin sisters Kayla and Caitlin O'Mara were riding with fellow runner Danielle Bila when their car hit a patch of ice and slid into the path of an oncoming truck. Caitlin and Danielle were injured, but survived. Kayla wasn't as fortunate. Kayla died at age 16, devastating the entire Goodrich community and wiping out a promising future for a runner that had taken part in 5 state championships for the Martians. Reilly and his father know the O'Mara story, but they haven't met the family. Yet, the Shellenbargers and O'Maras share a special bond. Goodrich coach Jennifer Sweet was also the Martians' coach when Caitlin O'Mara returned to the track for the Martians after her accident. Caitlin ran a leg on the 3,200 relay and something told Sweet to keep the baton she carried in that race. When Sweet went to visit Reilly in the hospital after his accident, she brought the baton with her. He got over there and he was in his wheelchair and I explained to him what I had did with Caitlin O'Mara and how she was able to come back and run in a relay, and that I was hoping he was going to be able to hold that baton as motivation to come back and run with his track team again," Sweet said. His dad videotaped that and played it back for him several times. "Every so often I would see him before track season and he would say, 'I see my relay baton. I'm working on it. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to run in that relay.'" He had that relay baton first meet and stood on the line with it. "I told him that's a tradition I don't want to carry on anymore. I want it to end there," Reilly said. These days, Reilly is a lot like any other high school kid. He goes to school, although only for about a half day, attends track practice and hangs out with friends. Like the rest of his teammates, he roams around the track during meets, joking with his peers and staying loose while waiting for his event. "I've had a lot of great support," he said, "especially from friends like the one that just walked by, Alexis Unangst. She's great support. Although he can no longer play contact sports such as soccer, Reilly's long-term outlook is good. That said, his father remains cautious, saying he never tries to count his proverbial eggs before they hatch when it comes to anything in life. "You're always worried," Scott Shellenbarger said. "Is there something around the bend that will come up?" But other than worrying, everything is on track for him becoming the kid he was going to be. As for Reilly, he's taking things day by day and isn't looking too far ahead into the future. He expects to begin driving again in August and is focused not only on breaking his own PR as well as his dad's, but there's a certain opponent who shall remain unnamed that he wants to beat in the state meet next year. "There's a few different ways I do things now," Reilly said. "I know I'll never drive where I've never been before. That's never going to happen again without someone else in the car. I'm just more careful, I guess."